All right, so let's start by looking at our do now, and then after that we'll go over homework issues if you have them. Some of the homework problems are a little tricky. So if you ask me about one of the ones that I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't really expect you to be able to do that on assessment, we might not do more than one of those, okay? But let's start with this factor out the GCF, because these two problems are a level that I would expect you to be able to do on your own. So we want to look at these. So the first problem just has two terms, and we're just asked to factor out the GCF. So what process do we use to do that? Like, what do we want to do first? Oops. I want to factor out the GCF. What do I do? I need to find it, right? So I'm going to take those two terms. It's like I'm just doing the beginning of one of the problems that we've been doing, right? This is like half a problem. 35a squared b to the fifth c. But sometimes I find that students, after you've been doing the like more complicated stuff, when I give you the like simpler problem, you're like, oh, I don't know what to do, right? So the purpose of this problem is to remind you that some of the problems are shorter, right? And that when they're short, little quick problems like that, that's all we have to do. All right. So let's start with the numbers. If I look at 15 and I look at 35, what do they have in common? What are they both divisible by? 5? Okay. And then if I look at a and a squared, what do they have in common? A. And if I look at b cubed and b to the fifth, what do they have in common? How many? They have b cubed, right? So basically we always take the lowest power, right? They have the lowest power in common. Now, I only see a c in the second one, so they don't have a c in common. So I'm not going to write that next. Okay, so here's my GCF. Right, that's what I'm going to factor out. So we have to think about what's going to be left behind. So if I have 5ab cubed, what would I have to multiply that by to get back to 15ab cubed? I definitely need a 3. Do I need any more b's on the top? Oh, no. I already have them all, right? So I just need a 3. Right, that's it. That's all we need for that first one. Okay, and then I have 35a squared b to the fifth c. I'm trying to get there, but all I have right now is 5ab cubed. What do I need? A 7 to get to 35, an a b squared, and a c. Right, those are the pieces that I still need. So this, oops, weird computer stuff. That is what's going to end up in the parentheses. So we come back over, and all we're going to write is that this is equal to 5ab cubed, because that's the GCF that we're factoring out. And then in parentheses, we have a 3 and a positive 7ab squared c. And that's it. That's all we're asked to do in that problem. So it's like half a problem. Are we okay? Yes, we're good? All right, so then we're going to look at the other problem, which is what we've been focusing more on the last couple of days because it's a little bit more involved. And this one has kind of everything but the kitchen sink in it, because what do you notice when you look at all 4 terms? If you look at all 4 terms, what do you see? They all have x's, right? And so if all 4 terms have something, we want to start by taking that big GCF out of everything. Okay, so they all have an x. I'm going to pull that x out, and this is where I use those big brackets, and then I kind of work inside the brackets. So I'm going to use the big brackets and take out an x. So if I take an x out of x to the 4th, what's left? X to the 3rd. And if I take an x out of negative 8x cubed, what's left? Negative 8x squared. It's basically just taking the power down by 1. Does everybody see that? Yeah? Okay. So I'm still going to have a 12, but instead of x squared, I'm just going to have x. And then I'm still going to have the negative 24, but no x. And now I sort of ignore the x in the big brackets. They're just along for the ride until the last step. And I focus on the inside of the problem as if that's the whole problem. Everybody good? Yeah? Okay, so what do I do if I was just given x cubed minus 8x squared plus 12x minus 24? What would I do? What's step 1? So I'm going to need to find the greatest common factor of x cubed and 8x squared. But before I do that, there's just a little bit of setup that I need to do. What's the piece? The parentheses, right? So the first 2 terms go in parentheses. I make sure there's that plus sign there. and then the second two terms go in parentheses. So then I look at the x cubed and the negative x squared off on the side, and it's a lot like the first do now problem that we're looking at. All right, what do those two terms have in common? X what? X squared, right? Remember, we peeled the lowest power. So the lowest power I see is a 2, so they each have an x squared in common. All right, what does the top one need to get back to x cubed? Just an x. And what does the bottom one need? Close, not just 8, but what kind of 8 is that? A negative 8, right? I got to keep the sign there. So this is their GCF. So I still have the x and I still have the big bracket, right? That doesn't change. But then inside now I pull out the x squared and I leave behind an x minus 8. How we doing? We okay? All right. And then I look at the next two terms, 12x and negative 24. What do they have in common? 12. What do I multiply 12 by to get 12x? 1x, right? 1x or just x. And what do I multiply 12 by to get negative 24? Negative 2. All right, so this is what they have in common. So I'm going to pull out a positive 12. And what does that leave behind? X minus 2. Now, if this was a television show, there'd be a background noise of like a record screech right now. How come? Yeah, those don't match. Does everybody see that? Right? Everything comes to a grinding halt. These don't match. Did we mess up? No, we didn't mess up. We did everything right. So what does that mean about this problem? It's a bad problem? No, it's an awesome problem. What does it mean? What's my answer? We do have an answer. What, Colby? Like that thing with the plus sign in it? No, because that's not factored, right? In factorization, everything's multiplying everything else. And there we've got like weird parentheses and plus signs.
Would it be x minus 8 plus x minus 2?
No, I can't pull those out because they're not the same. So here's the deal. That line didn't work. It's not factorable at that level, right? We didn't mess up, but they don't match. So it's not factorable at that level. But at the step above that, didn't we do some factoring, right? We had x times something. So that part was the answer. So we've actually got to come back up here. And we're going to take the parentheses out because those parentheses, whoops, didn't accomplish anything. The only parentheses that matter are the big brackets. Because see how we have something, x, times something, x cubed minus 8x squared plus 12x minus 24. That's the best we can do. That's as far as this particular one factors. Do you think this is going to happen to us a lot, like when we're taking a mastery check, for example? Probably not. Like, what's the greatest number of times you think I might put something like that on a mastery check? Once. Or do you think maybe never? Like maybe never, right? So never or once would be the most I would expect to see a problem that's like this on like a mastery check or a show what you know. Okay? So if you're telling me, oh, it can't be factored like 5 times, then you're probably missing something. But if it happens once, that's feasible. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah? So it's important for you to know that that can happen, but it's also important for you to know that that's not normal. Everybody's good? All right. So I'm going to stop this one here. I'll start a new video when we talk about daily practice.